Right, here we go. We are calling the meeting of the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation Motorcycle Safety Advisory Board. It is 10 o'clock, and I would ask everybody to please mute your microphones, only turn them on when you speak, and remember to please announce your name when speaking. I am the presiding officer, Keith Rovell, and we will now do the roll call and certification of quorum. Would Anna Clark please do that for us?
Of course. Presiding officer Keith Rovell.
Here.
Roger Bowles is absent. Chris Lifton.
Here.
Ricky Wyatt.
Here.
Commander Robert Richmond.
Here.
Michael Manser.
Here.
Kyle McNew.
Here.
Jude Schnecknider is absent. Jeffrey Alford.
Here.
We have a quorum, sir.
Excellent. Welcome, everybody. I would ask board members who would like to make a motion and second to approve the minutes of April 29th of 2021. Any discussion on that?
Motion made.
All right. Well, if none, then let's tally the vote to approve the minutes of April 29th. Anna?
Yes, sir. Presiding officer Keith Rovell.
Aye.
Chris Liftfin.
Aye.
Excuse me. Ricky Wyatt.
Aye.
Robert Richmond.
Aye.
Michael Manser.
Aye.
Kyle McNew.
Aye.
Jude Chuck Snyder.
Aye.
Jeffrey Alford.
Aye.
The motion passes, and please note that Mr. Schnecknider is in the meeting.
Welcome, Jude. All right. Keith Rovell, presiding officer. We will now move to the public comment section. I do need to remind everyone that anyone wishing to address the board must submit an email by following the public comments instructions located at www.tdlr.texas.gov. Emails must be submitted to board.comments@tdlrtexas.gov by 12 noon, July 16th. So it is past that now. The offices are not open at this time for public comment. The Motorcycle Safety Advisory Board did receive one public comment. It was sent to the board members beforehand. The public comment will not be read publicly, and we do not have anyone who wishes to speak under public comments. So with that note, we will move to the next item on the agenda, which are the staff reports. And we'll begin with Chloe Whalen with the licensing division.
Good morning, Presiding Officer Rovell. Chloe Whalen, Licensing Manager for the motorcycle program. How are you and the board members this morning? I would like to start with our personnel updates. On July 15th, we welcome Ms. Karen Davis to TDLR, the licensing division, and the safety regulator team. We are super excited to have her, and we are wishing her well and welcome aboard, Ms. Karen. So we'll move down to our statistics report. For active motorcycle instructors, we have issued no licenses as of this report. We renewed 132. That population is 272. We have no active, no new licenses issued for our active ATV instructors and no renewals currently. That population still stands at 30. And we've issued for the certificate orders for MSB 8, we have issued 20,659 certificates. And that concludes my report. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Chris Litfin, Advisory Board member. Thanks for the report on the statistics. Could you tell us, have you received requests for new, you said no new coaches have been approved. Have you received requests for the coaches that went through the first RCP? And do you have any status on that process?
Yes, sir, we have. I believe last week it was that we did issue one license for someone that had already completed the training.
Okay. How many requests or licenses have you gotten from the graduates from the first RCP class?
I would have to check with staff and see what applications we have received and that number, and I can get that back to you before the meeting is over with.
Okay, thank you. The reason I ask is because I've been in touch with several of the graduates from the RCP class, and they've been expressing some frustration with the fact that it's been over a month and they're not able to teach yet, and they're not getting status on that it will be happening soon.
Sure, absolutely. I'll check with staff here in just a few moments.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, board members, are there any other questions or comments for Ms. Dunn? If not, we'll move on. Next is the Customer Service Division, and we call on Dawn Robinson, the manager of that division, for her report.
Good morning, Advisory Board members and TDLR staff. My name is Dawn Robinson. I'm one of the managers here in customer service. I am taking the spot for Jacqueline Rush, the other manager who normally does this report for you. She is out on vacation. Wanted to give you just a few statistics. Our current total emails from September of last year to May, when the report was run, we had a total of 149 emails and a total of 449 calls. If you have any questions, I'll be gladly to assist you.
Board members, any questions? Thank you, Ms. Robinson. We'll move on now to the Education and Examination Division, and I'm calling on Michael Ford Strawn, the manager of that.
Good morning, Chairman and members. Michael Strawn, Education and Examination Manager. Here to give the Education and Examination Division report to you all. For motorcycle schools, we remain stagnant at this point for this quarter. We have issued no new licenses for any new schools. However, I wanted to bring to attention, seeing that from March to April and our current reporting, we went from 74 schools to 60. And the reason why is we have a footnote there where we have removed military schools or training sites from that list of motorcycle training schools in Texas from our total number. So we didn't have any closures in any of our businesses. They're just no longer being brought into our normal count that we have. Scrolling down, our motorcycle school renewals all renew here the end of August. So we should start seeing those probably by the time that we have our next advisory board or not. We are going to be reporting those renewals at that point in time. We do remind people that the renewals for the schools have gone out, and if you have not gotten those renewal notices yet, you can do so by going to our webpage, find the notice for renewal or the renewal forms there, or you can contact us and we will be happy to send it out to you as well. Our motorcycle course providers, again, this is kind of a same thing where we've had the same number of course providers. However, again, we're redoing how we've totaled these numbers effective as of April, where we are breaking it out. Before, we had all the course providers as they were given to us from DPS, and now as we've continued to break those out purely for motorcycle, removing anything that is a track course or was ATV, we now have just 2 approved curriculum in Texas for what we have here. And then continuing down, from those course providers, we have still maintain a number of 46 individual curriculums. Next part would be our school audits. As of May, we have actually moved past our pilot process for audits and have begun auditing schools full-time, motorcycle schools full-time. We conducted 4 in May as of the time of this report, but we have continued to do so in June and here in July as well. So scroll down. For our current updates, we wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that as of June 1st, 2021, we will no longer be issuing MSB 8 or completion certificates to military bases. As you saw earlier in the report, we no longer count them as part of a regulated entity. They are free to order completion certificates from the course provider or to develop their own, but TDLR does not regulate the training that is happening on federal land. So you will see that we will no longer be issuing those MSB 8 completion cards to those military providers. As the next point of clarification, we wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that there are blank duplicate course completion certificates that are available for schools to order from TDLR. The order form is on our website, and we are currently still allowing all schools to exhaust the DPS certificates that they had in place before you will get TDLR specific duplicate completion cards. As I mentioned earlier, but I'll reiterate, motorcycle school notices were emailed out on June 5th, 2021. If you are a motorcycle school, you did not get that, you can go to our homepage for motorcycle safety and locate it there. If not, contact somebody in this department and we'll make sure that you get that. Additionally, notice for all instructors in the state, you are not required to submit your first aid training to us and CPR training to us as soon as you do it. You can provide it to your school. You must maintain it at all times, but it only needs to be sent to us upon renewal of your license. And then if you scroll down just a little bit more, sorry. And we have adjusted our range approval process to remove an additional regulatory step and really hope to speed up the process that's happening with range approvals for new motorcycle schools. We know it's imperative that you all get out there, have a new range approved as soon as possible. There used to be a lot of back and forth between TDLR, between the curriculum providers, and back and forth. So what we're doing now is we're wanting, if a school wants to send in a application, you get everything taken care of with your curriculum provider. Make sure you meet all of their standards, get everything approved through them, and then you will make a range application to TDLR, in which we will give the final approval off of. We have worked with the curriculum providers to make sure that they're okay with this change in process and making sure that we're all on the same page. And what this does is, formerly, there was a contact to TDLR. TDLR would give a review, look it over. It would then get sent to the curriculum provider to review, then back to the individual that was applying, and then back to TDLR again. And instead, now it's just going to be you directly get all of your ducks in a row with your curriculum provider, make application to TDLR. We'll get final sign off from your range, and you're approved to go. And moving down. As mentioned, we are doing the motorcycle audits as well. We really wanted to kind of highlight this piece today and let you all know exactly what that looks like. When TDLR comes out to do an audit, our focus is to educate the schools, the instructors, and any individual that we come out in contact with. This is not a gotcha type thing or anything else. Our staff is coming out and they've been out to several schools already, and we're receiving great feedback and great praise. Mike Sconza, my team, has primarily been doing all of that and has really embodied what we've asked him to do, to go out and make sure that we're helping, train everybody, and not just making sure markings are done correctly and that, motorcycles are maintained correctly and that the classroom's there and the records are in order, but also making sure that individuals that are running these programs understand how to navigate our website, understand where to find the resources on our website, making sure that they have proper contacts here at the agency when we're going out. And we're also bringing those lessons learned back into what we're doing for future audits. So if we're seeing that people are having, the same kind of issues that are going on, we're going to make sure that we're going to provide training on those fronts. Right now, we're really seeing e-certificates. When we come out, they're not always proof that individuals have completed their e-course for their MSF course. As with anything, if you're issuing a completion certificate, we need to be able to see as auditors they have completed every facet of their training. So please make sure that if you have those, we don't care if records are kept electronically or paper, but you do need to make sure that all of their training is there and available for review, and that you can prove that that individual completed all of your training. Additionally, making sure that your insurance is still valid. We've seen a few times now insurance has expired. Those two have been our most common things as we've gone out. There have been minor safety issues, but honestly, it's been a huge learning experience for us. It's been an awesome growth opportunity for us to get out, build relationships with people that are out there, and we've had amazing feedback. Great emails coming back to myself, praising Mike, praising the process, and excited for where we're going to go forward. With that, it concludes my report, and I'm open to any questions that you have.
Okay, Presiding Officer Keith Ravel with a question. Thank you, Ford. And by the way, if the rest of the board members have not looked on the TDLR site, it's an excellent resource. There is a complete written guide to those audits on there for you. I have had several providers ask me specifically about the e-course. The one thing that they were questioning is, you know, before someone comes in, if we check on it electronically on the MSF Res page, and the number for the completion certificate is noted and identified on the completed roster and entered into REMS that way, is that sufficient? We find that many people are doing these on their phone. Quite a lot of people don't have printers. A lot of them lack the knowledge technologically to send the printer to us. Will that be enough, or should we be stressing that you need to present that printed certificate so that we've got it for your auditors when they come?
Thank you, Chairman. Michael Strawn, TDLR. So we have not stressed that it needs to be printed per se. For us, the motorcycle school could keep all of their records electronically. If somebody emailed those records, they had a copy of it there. If they went to the MSF site, printed the certificate themselves, put it in their file. But what we would say is anywhere that this student's records are being kept, their copy of their MSV8 completion certificate, their training requirements, everything else, we would really like to see those records all kept in the same place. Our auditors, our staff do not have time to go through and individually look up every individual. That being said, if y'all had an entire electronic process that can be kept there, we don't care if you print it for them, if they email it to you, or however, but really we'd like to see all those records kept together for the ease of audit during those times. Additionally, if you just take a look at it and it's notated somewhere else, there's a possibility that you could skip or miss getting proof from someone. However, I would say that we're always willing to talk to our work groups to figure out what the best process may be for our schools that are out there to make sure that we're not creating any regulatory burdens.
Okay, thank you. Are there any? Yes, sir. Yes, Chris.
Chris Litvin, advisory board member. Just to clarify a little bit, and before I do, Michael, thank you for the status. And I've heard the same thing. I've heard positive things, and I've heard that from the experiences I've heard, it has been a positive experience and not a gotcha experience, and I appreciate that. I want to thank you for that. And we want to do the right thing, and we want to be partners with you guys to do the right thing, and we want to look forward to being educated on anything we're not doing right and getting it taken care of. So I appreciate the spirit in which these are conducted so far and the spirit in which you've presented these facts going forward. But just to clarify the question that Keith asked, I appreciate your need to have all the information together in the same place to facilitate and speed the process of auditing the records. But Keith asked if it was sufficient to have the certificate numbers like on the roster for the students and not the actual certificates printed? And I didn't hear a direct answer to that. Would it be, as long as we have those numbers, a completion certificate number for each student in the class in the file, would that be sufficient, or do you need actual certificates?
So Michael Strawn, TDLR. Thank you, Chris, for allowing me to clarify that. And I apologize for not giving a direct answer on that. We don't have a rule explicitly stating that it has to be, exactly, we don't have a rule specific to the e-course process. So if you have it notated, you have the information there in any capacity, we would accept it. It does make things more difficult, as I said, to come out. And a lot of times if we're looking through something and it's not readily available and you're keeping it somewhere else and your systems are down, and we don't have the proof where we're going through the rest of the records, we're going to assume that it's not there and it could be a finding. So that's why we stress to make sure that they're all together. However, by definition, however you have it tracked would meet the requirements. So yes, that would be fine.
Okay, but I'm not to belabor the point, but if I have it all together, but by all together that means a completion number for each student in the class, do you consider that all together, or do you need an actual image of a certificate?
I do not need an image of a certificate, as we do not have a rule specifically stating so.
Okay. I just want to, when I get audited, I want to facilitate the process, and if I can have
Right.
a completion number for each student there, and that meets your requirement, then I'll have it all there so you can review it together. And so just for some feedback, I was talking to another provider, and that was one of their points. And they said the process went well and it was positive, but the one thing that they learned during the process was that even though the certificates are not required to be printed and maintained, that during the audit process, they kind of were required to be printed and maintained with the folder. But I understand, I totally understand on your side and my side that this is a learning process and a lot of things are changing and continue to change and improve. So that's just what I wanted to touch on there. And I did have one other question for you. I appreciate the update on new range approval process, and I like the new process. And I've had several potential new ranges come up, but due to the shortage of rider coaches, I have not yet partaken and gone through that process. The question for you is, I have a pretty good handle on the process and the timeline to get a range approved through MSF. Once I get that done, I find a parking lot and I do all my work and I submit it to MSF and I get approval back and I take it to TDLR. Do you have an estimate on the time frame for once I submit that to TDLR when I could get approval from TDLR?
Michael Strawn, TDLR. I don't have a specific timeline. I do know that the group that processes those things right now does not have a backlog or anything that is holding them up. They are worked in the order received, and we have several programs that come through that area. I would say a week or two at most. Again, I'm not entirely sure, but there is no extended backlog for the processing of range applications. They would be processed when they came in. As soon as all the criteria was met, sometimes there is the back and forth between we receive the pictures, there may not be some clarity there that we need, cones may not be in the correct area. We would ask for pictures additionally to come back to us. And usually what we've seen in those times is we get back and forth to people and they're approved in a few days at that point in time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Maybe I do have one other question. Would this be the right time and person to ask about adding new employees? Is it part of the audit process is to make sure that we have all of our employees there and that they're on the books and that they're background checked and all that?
I will respectfully pass that question to our executive office, who can probably better frame an entire agency picture on where we're going moving forward.
Okay. Okay. Is that kind of still in process?
This is David Gonzalez. I'll address it during legislative update if that's okay, Mr. Lifton.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Board members, are there any other questions or comments for Mr. Strawn?
Presiding Officer Ravel.
Yes, ma'am.
Mary Winston, TDLR. If I could have your permission just to back up a little bit, we have a couple of housekeeping items. to take care of. First, with the minutes, we were rocking and rolling there, and we didn't get a second. We got a motion.
Oops.
We voted. We didn't get a second. Okay, I see two. I'm thinking, Mr. McNew, are you giving us a second there?
I will definitely give you a second.
Okay, that's one thing. I think we can handle that there. The second thing is Chloe has gotten that information for you, and I wanted to, before we moved on, to kind of get that to you because I know Mr. Lipton had those questions.
Thank you, Mary. Chloe?
Chloe Whalen, licensing manager. Thank you, Miss Mary. Board Member Lipton, we have issued, as of today, 6 new license for instructors.
Thank you for the feedback, Chloe. That means that you have 6 of the 8 RCP graduates are now able to teach in Texas?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, that's very good. That's thank you for the timely feedback.
You're welcome.
Good news. Thank you. And thank you, Mary. All right, we're moving on with our
Supervisor Board.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. I was waiting for my turn there. I didn't want to step on anybody.
There you go, Jeff.
Ford, how do we track the status of our licenses at schools?
How do you track the status of the licenses of your schools as far as the current license term on our website? On our website, you should be able to go through and search individual school licenses and find the information on that without, I don't know how to expressly dictate how to do that through this, but if you're willing, I'm happy to work with you after this and walk you through to navigate to it.
Okay, yeah, I see find the instructor, but I don't see, it says find a school, but then it takes you to a map and it doesn't tell you their expiration date or if their renewal was accepted, since all of us have to apply before August to get a new license. I'm just curious if there was an update on the status. We sent it in several months ago and haven't heard anything back from it. It's my question.
Okay, absolutely. So there is no tracking process on the website as far as like filed, pending, or approved kind of scenario, if that's what you're looking for. I would have to check into why those were not processed at this point in time. I don't know if it was due to the renewal period when they were coming up, they were being held until that point. But I will get with our group that is processing applications for that, and I'll have to get you an answer.
Thank you.
Okay, board members, are there any other questions, comments for Mr. Strawn?
I'm going to peek in one more time, Presiding Officer.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just wanted to make a note that Commissioner Collier, who we were going to let into the meeting, she wanted to be here. She's not able to participate in the meeting, but she is watching via YouTube, and I wanted to thank her for doing that as one of our commissioners, to take that time to give that special attention to one of our individual programs. So thank you, Commissioner Collier, via YouTube. That's it. I should be done interrupting for a little bit.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the Enforcement Division. I'm calling on Arusa Nizami, the Enforcement Prosecutor, with the update for that division.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman and Council members. My name is Arusa Nizami, and I am a prosecutor with the Enforcement Division, and I will present the staff report for you today. First, I have some personnel updates for you. We had 3 recent hires here at EDLR. The 3 attorneys are Sarah McKinney, Rachel Sejan, and Hunter McKinley were hired as Attorney 2 positions to fill the vacancies created by promotions in the Enforcement Division. These 3 attorneys will be working on our inspection cases and our unlicensed air conditioning electrical cases. Their hirings were effective April 15, 2021, and we're glad that they're on our team. Now I will get into the stats of the fiscal year and provide you with a general overview. In fiscal year 2021, which started September 1st, 2020, and is now through May 2021, we have had 3 cases open, and 1 of those cases has closed. There were no cases that resulted in disciplinary actions, and the average time to close a case was about 18 days, and 100% of those cases were resolved within 6 months. Again, there were no cases that resulted in disciplinary action or final orders. The one case that was closed this fiscal year was closed for being informally resolved. To further expand on that, the case was a criminal history case, which required a background check that was cleared and a license was granted by the department. And as of March 2021, there are currently 2 cases with the department that are still open. Additionally, we have sources of cases open for fiscal year 2021. As shown on the pie charts to the left, 67% of the cases were open came from consumers, and the other 33% was from criminal history. Lastly, if you scroll down a little bit, the criminal conviction guidelines that the enforcement group helped develop were adopted by the commission and published in the Texas Registrar. They are now effective and being used by our criminal history team. And that concludes my report. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask.
Okay, are there any questions? Comments? Seeing none, thanks, Ms. Nizami. We call now on David Gonzalez, the Deputy Executive Director, with a report from the Executive Office.
Good morning, Presiding Officer Ravel, Advisory Board members. Appreciate y'all being here today. So I'm going to start off with the COVID update. Going to try to keep it brief, and then we'll start talking about legislative session and some communication outreach numbers. We previously conveyed that we've not been immune to the impacts of COVID, so I'm not going to rehash all the details from our previous COVID updates, but I'll summarize just a few of the significant points. We did have to shut down certain divisions because of positive test results. I believe we shared that with you. Most significantly, our mailroom and our licensing division. We had to go through some protocols with social distancing and arranging hoteling situations and rotations. That has diminished, obviously, as we've gotten further along. We've got higher vaccination rates. We've got herd immunity coming. So our return to office efforts have been gradually progressing. All of our efforts to provide any relief in this regard have been communicated on our website. So still on our main page, you can click to see the COVID relief updates, whether it was waivers by the governor, which are probably about to expire on most of these things, or relief that we were providing as an agency in the efforts that we were doing. What we've done, as has most organizations, is we've simply adapted along the way with all of our COVID efforts. There's been some experiences like virtual advisory board meetings that we will continue. We actually got that put into legislative action so that we can have advisory boards going forward. Not every agency has that authority, but we were granted that authority, and I think it's been a good thing. Does save the travel, does allow for more participation, and including public participation as well. We've also explored virtual inspections with some of our programs, which is an enhanced feature. Again, we're not going to get rid of our in-person inspections. We're still going to be out there, but we're trying to be safe with our staff and with the public. So virtual inspections is something that we're adding to our tool belt. But the pandemic has limited some of our outreach efforts. We haven't been to as many conferences as we would normally do for outreach. We haven't been available in person. That's likely to have an uptick in the next few months. And I just want to make sure you're aware if there's something that comes up that would allow us to participate and increase education or just more publicity for the program, we're interested in those opportunities. So make sure to bring those to our attention, because that is something we were used to doing, obviously, prior to the pandemic. The most significant development affecting our customers, and Mr. Litfin, I appreciate you bringing up, you're interested in getting people licensed. That's what our job is. We want to do it as well. Chloe's numbers obviously report to May. So you asking about, well, what's current? And she being able to provide you that information, I'm happy. I was pleased that we were able to get that for you. It is fair for y'all to inquire and ask about it. It has been difficult. We have a backlog, and because we have 30 something programs at our agency, it affects each program a little bit differently. Y'all are the new guys on the block, so y'all have some pretty high expectations. We're new. We want our licenses. Completely understandable. That's what every program has, but there has been some disparity. Some of our programs are a little bit more complex. Our Bar Cause programs, our electricians programs take a little bit more time to review, but they can come in front of y'all's applications and sometimes hold them up. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to see if we can make better progress and improve on it. We've actually got emergency waiver request, a license extension authority that Brian has. It actually goes through September. And that relief is actually for our customers, because if there's any backlog that we have, whether it's our licensing room or mail room, finance, whatever it may be, if we're taking time to process a license, we don't want anybody to go without license. So there's an extension that's automatically granted for 120 days, and that goes through September. Again, that's one part of the relief that we've been able to provide that hopefully will be helpful for some of our licensees. May not help you guys because y'all are just getting into the programs and trying to get everybody licensed as quickly as possible. But it would explain some of the questions about the schools as well. I do not want any of our customers to not follow up on their applications. If you have not heard back from us within a month's time, that's unusual. That is not our norm. We may need it brought to our attention because we have a lot of programs and we just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence. So again, not afraid to address this in the public forum. Hopefully phone calls before we get to an advisory board would help us to give you those numbers ahead of time and make sure everything's on track. Appreciate the understanding and the patience because it has. Fast forward to July.
David?
This year. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Hi, Mary Winston. We can't hear you. I think you kind of faded off a little bit. Okay.
How about now?
I think that's better. Is that better, everyone? Okay. Thank
Can hear
you.
me now?
Yeah, we are losing you.
Interesting. Okay. Microphone's in the same.
Oh, the wonders of modern technology.
If there was a way.
Yeah, David, we are unable to hear you at this point.
Okay. If we could go to the next item. And I'll come back.
Okay, I think we got that, Mr. Ravel. David has
Yes.
requested that we move to the next item and then come back to the executive office report.
And we will do that. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, David. All right, we will come back to the executive report here in a moment. For right now, we will move on to an update and discussion on the current contract with the Texas A&M Engineering Extension Service, TEEX, to administer the instructor training program pursuant to Texas Transportation Code 662.005 and 662.0064. Calling on Derek Burkhalter, the Assistant General Counsel, for the update, please.
Good morning, advisory board members. My name is Derek Burkhalter. I'm the Assistant General Counsel for TDLR for this program. So we received a request from an advisory board member to include on this agenda an update concerning the instructor preparation course being taught by TEEX. So I'm going to kind of hand it over to Kyle McNew to give us a little bit of information on that program. Thank you, Derek. Board members, a brief recap of what's taken place so far. As mentioned, we have gotten one rider coach instructor class out of the way. Board member Lipton, you were asking about the number of new licenses issued, 6 out of the 8. Just a quick change in that there were actually 10 students that actually successfully completed the training. We had 2 students, one that was unable to make it there due to a traffic crash en route to the school. And so they had to drop out. And then we had one that was unable to complete the course to meet the requirements of the course. So we did complete the training for 10 students. We currently have the next class starts in 2 weeks. It is full with 12 students. We had a class scheduled for October the 2nd through the 21st. We set our dates early this year for those class dates, only to have the SEC and Texas A&M University football scheduled 2 major games, both on the front side of that class and on the back side. So we had to move our October 2nd class to the month of December. Had we not done that, the hotel rooms that generally go to the people that are attending the class jumped from about $100 a night to almost $400 a night. So instead of spending $800 in lodging, they'd be close to over $2,400 to make it through. So we had to move that because of A&M scheduling football games during our motorcycle courses. But actually, it's the life of a college town. Both the next two classes coming up are full to capacity at 12 students each. Looking at some information that was provided to TDLR, this was a unique class. The first class was a little unique. Everybody was from Texas. We had one person from out of state that was looking to relocate to Texas and get their Texas requirements met as far as becoming a rider coach. So I would tell you that the skewed number, the average distance that the instructors traveled at 605, keep in mind that includes over 2,800 miles for one person coming all the way from California. As far as an average length of time that the students have had to wait, it's about 59 days from the time they actually submit a registration to the time they get through the end of the class. The shortest period of wait on the last one was 40 days from time of registration to time of completion. Any questions? In addition to that, there was also a discussion about provider agreements. As you know, board members, we have developed a process in which people can work to provide the training also through an agreement with Texas with TEACS. We've had 2 people show interest. Of those 2 people showing interest, we are currently working with one on a statement of work to move them forward so that they will be in a position to offer that training. And without saying anything much more, I can tell you that we're working to get that done because they are ready to roll a class in October also. So that's where we are on provider agreements at this time. And that's all.
Board members, any questions, comments?
Jeff Alford, Advisory Board. Kyle, is there a time frame for new classes to be posted or a wait list to be created so that we can accurately track the number of people that are waiting for a new class to be posted?
Jeff, I will tell you that we are about to post out additional classes, and we do have a wait list that we work as we start to fill classes also, and that's an internal process through our student management system.
Chris Litvin, Advisory Board Member. Kyle, is there any thought as you get, I forget what it's called, as you get other individuals certified to teach RCP classes not at your facility, is there any thought to you guys teaching these classes somewhere else when you have conflicts on the schedule like this? Because it seems like this is going to be a seasonal but a perennial issue.
Chris, that is something that we have discussed there in our offices internally with administration. We do have through the contract with TDLR, we do have the if you will, the discretion to do so, and so we will be looking at that.
Oh, okay, thank you. Because I would imagine that I kind of understand why, but the process to become a certified provider is fairly painful and long for someone like myself. But on the other hand, I think there's several someones like myself around Texas who would be more than willing to help facilitate offsite training if and when needed. Maybe there's something that we can do there. So just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Kyle, Keith Ravel, Advisory Board. Question, what is being done to promote the new instructor prep classes when they are being offered? What is the process? How does the word get out?
The word goes out, Chairman, we have our website and those classes are listed there. Besides that, there's just the word of the mouth in the community and across the board in that respect. We haven't done any hard marketing or anything to that nature due to the fact that we are filling those classes up and waitlisting them at this point.
Jude?
Jude Jack Snyder, Rider Rep, Motorcycle Safety Advisor Board. Kyle, can you tell me if y'all have had any conversations or discussions at this point on offering instructor training in alternative curriculums to the Motorcycle Safety Foundation?
Jude, we have not done anything other than that. In our original contract with TDLR, that was the direction that we took for year one getting established. It's not off the board that we would look at other things. It's just that's what was originally outlined in the statement of work with TDLR in year one.
I'm assuming that leaves open the possibility in future statement of work that that might be something that's provided.
That does leave open that possibility. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Jeff?
Jeff Alford, advisory board member. Keith, is there a requirement for the range size to be used for offsite providers?
Question has been raised regarding.
I'm sorry, I meant to say Kyle. I'm sorry, I said wrong K word. Sorry. Dyslexia.
No
I don't
problem,
know.
Jeff.
Monday, coffee hasn't kicked in. I don't know.
Well, what I would tell you is that we're going to go with right now. We're pretty much in our requirements. It needs to be a full size MSF range versus the condensed range, simply because of the need to handle the capacity of the number of rider coaches.
Thank you.
Chris?
Chris Litvin, advisory board member. Kyle, you have a wait list of people who are interested in becoming coaches. My question is, do you ask the waitlist members what curriculum they would like to become coaches in? As Jude mentioned, if we're looking at possibility of adding this in future statements of work, it would be nice to know what curriculums there's a demand for if you have coaches on the wait list. If you could capture what curriculums in their priority order that they'd like to be trained in, that would help guide our decisions on what classes need to be offered in the future. Is that something that we're capturing right now?
Chris, currently we are not, since we are locked into the MSF curriculum based on the statement of work for year one. So we haven't looked at diversification of curriculum offerings.
Okay, I might suggest that even if you're locked into only providing one curriculum, it wouldn't take any time or work to capture that on the application for the waitlist, and that would help guide us for the future.
Okay, Keith Ravel, advisory board. Kyle, question. There have been some recent new developments in how instructor training is done and rider coach training are done in the United States, including some that involve more online elements and less in-person elements that would help with the issue that you mentioned there regarding A&M conflicts. Has there been any discussion about the possibility of that being used here in the Texas arena?
Mr. Chairman, that has been brought to our attention just recently, and we are looking at that. Currently, as we see it, it would fit the same model as a cooperative learning center or a CLC or a contract provider. We still need to, there still needs to continue to be some discussions on behalf of TEKS administration to determine the feasibility of that moving forward. So those discussions have started based on us becoming aware of that option, sir.
Thank you, Kyle. And I was just pinged, someone watching the meeting has asked if I could ask you how many instructor preps or rider coach preps are projected for 2022?
Mr. Chairman, based on historical document, because we have not created the 22 contract with TDLR. Currently, in the original negotiations, it was one rider prep per quarter with the option to add additional rider preps in consultation with TDLR. So I don't know if that will change in 22. Those are discussions that we'll have to have with TDLR as we get closer to the renewal time.
Thank you. Board members, are there other questions, comments for Mr. McNew?
Mr. Ravel?
Yep.
Mary Winston again, poking in. Actually, we've been working behind the scenes as we've been providing these reports staff has, and Michael Strawn does have some information that he would like to share.
Excellent. Michael?
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mary. Michael Strawn, Education and Examination. Jeff, I was following, Mr. Alford, I was following up with your question earlier about the school license. We did some researching to find out that that was renewed back in the middle of June, and you should have received that already. So after this, we will contact you about resending out that license to you so that you're sure that you get it. But we checked with our staff. All of our applications are processed and have been processed, as they're being received. So I just wanted to clarify on that front, and that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. All right. Moving back, have we had our audio problems fixed yet for Deputy Executive Director David Gonzalez?
Deputy Executive Director David Gonzalez, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. And we can continue and move back on that item agenda back into the executive office report.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And my apologies. Technology is a great thing. We've got different ways to access it. Right now, I am actually in the office, so my best connection should be right now, but I had to come to the office to get a poor connection, apparently. I'm going to finish up on COVID-19, just to let you know that fast forward to July of this year, we are still trying to stay safe with our staff. We're still doing wellness check-ins. We're gradually bringing staff back into the office. I'm in the office actually 3 days a week. I have some staff that don't have the option. They have to come in for mail. We have some staff in finance that have to come in and do their jobs every day. Again, trying to still stay safe until we get herd immunity, until the variants are taken care of. We're still trying to keep our staff safe while doing our best to keep up with these workloads. And obviously, you've gotten some positive responses in this meeting on the outcome of some license applications. We hope to continue that, but if not, it's okay to contact us and follow up. We do want to do our best. I'm going to move on to the legislative update unless there's any questions on COVID. All right, so the most significant legislative update I have for you is HB 1560, House Bill 1560, which was TDLR's sunset bill. We started the sunset process in 2019 with the Sunset Commission staff in our offices, diving deep into every process we have, all the programs we had responsibility for that particular sunset review. And they came back with a thumbs up for us. We got extended for another 12 years. So our agency survived the sunset process, and we will be good until 2033. So that's a good thing that we're able to continue our services and continue as an agency. They found that whatever we're doing is good enough to continue for another 12 years. In House Bill 1516, quite a bit of legislation. Each article has different requirements, and we've got right now bill implementation teams, over 20 plus bill implementation teams assigned to implement those changes in statute. And so it's a lot of work on our hands. Obviously, session's over. You would think we get to take a breather. It's a very short breather before our staff have to ramp up and start figuring out what did the legislature decide and how do we have to implement these bills. Some of the more significant bills include a consolidation of our two largest programs, the barber cosmetology programs, coming together. And the reason I share these bills with you, it does affect all the other program workloads when something significant happens to our agency. So I know it's not related to motorcycle. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these things, but you need to know what affects our agency does go downhill, even for the smaller programs. That consolidation is a significant one of getting the barber and cosmetology programs into one licensing scenario. So that's pretty significant. We've had some deregulation, which should eventually relieve us of some responsibilities. The polygraph program is being deregulated. We've had some licenses actually in cosmetology being deregulated, and barber as well, the instructor license being deregulated. A few other licenses here and there that we won't be doing. There was talk of us getting the Texas Racing Commission, and it actually was into the last few minutes of our sunset bill being considered being added to that bill. We did not get that program transferred to us, which obviously we serve the legislature and we're at will employees for them. If they need us to do something, we do it. But in this instance, it is being continued and not being transferred to TDLR. That would have been a significant workload from us and would have had us shifting gears quite a bit. So again, these things are significant. You need to know about them. And during legislative session, we go through this every 2 years. It's a roller coaster ride for us, but it is significant. The most important thing, and I think this addresses some of the questions brought up earlier, are one of the most important things is the monies. So we got our budgets cut by 5%. Along with that 5% budget cut, even though the initial appropriations were accommodating for motorcycles to get 9 positions, because we were told we needed to cut budgets, we only fill 3 of those positions. The other 6 are frozen at this time. So you'd asked about more employees and background checks. We want those additional employees, and we actually put in our exceptional items request to get those monies restored so that we could have the hiring authority to increase our FTE count. We did not get that approved as an exceptional item. One of the other things significant for this program, the grant authority to consider the funding for motorcycle promotion and those things, we do not have the actual authority to request any of those monies. We requested that authority for that funding. Again, it was not accepted or approved for us, and that's significant because we've got basically the same budget that DPS had, but in addition to trying to do our work and the work that they were doing, we've got contractual obligations with TEEX and TTI. So we're going to have a challenge. The expectations are we're trying to promote safety in motorcycle instructors as well, but we're trying to do so with limited budgets, in fact, cut budgets. So there is going to be some challenges. I think we're up to the challenges we have been in the past, but we're going to have to be creative. So the questions that y'all bring, the ideas that y'all bring, the items that are discussed during work groups, they're going to be important if we're going to be creative and try to do the best we can with the funding that we have. So if you wanted to look these up, they were exceptional items 3 and exceptional items 4 in our LAR request. Again, neither of those got approved, so we are not going to be able to have the authority to get to the grants and request additional funding. I believe there was, and I'll have to defer to TEEX and TTI. I think TEEX may have done a little bit better than we did on their budget, so they may have some funding that may be available. TTI, I think, was very similar to us with some budget cuts. The 5% budget cuts were across the board, so TEEX had to go through that as well. But I think for offering schooling and training, I think TEEX overall budget went up. I don't know if any of it was necessarily appropriated to the motorcycles program, so that's something that they would have to probably review and address. What else on the legislative side? The bill implementation teams are something that we're going to be going through probably for the next year. We're going to be deliberate. We're going to be communicative in everything that we do. Not many bills that affect the motorcycles programs, but y'all already know we have enough on our plates with the assignments we had from last legislative session. So keeping us on our toes, continuing to present these questions while we get through this bill implementation time period is going to be important for us. Mary, if there's anything that you think I'm forgetting that we may have brought up in a previous legislative update, please help me.
David, I think you gave them the the good, the not great, but the fantastic news that we are continued. Sunset did continue us, so we can continue to grow and work and improve. Didn't get the extra money, but we're used to working on the skinny, and we just push over and do what we need to do to get this done until such time we can get more monies approved.
The only other thing I can think of, David Gonzalez again, TDLR, the only other thing that's significant, we did get approval for the next biennium for $2 million for the phase 2 of our Texas licensing system. Why this is significant for you guys is we have about 9 different databases that we manage, including this new data that we do with the motorcycles program. It's not effective, it's not efficient, but it's what we've inherited as we've inherited different programs through the years. So we are trying to put all of our programs into one single Texas licensing system. We started that a little bit over a year and a half ago, and we've made some progress. Y'all's isn't one of the first programs. It's actually starting out with the electricians and massage as the first programs to come because they were most conducive to the transfer. But that approval for more monies for another 2 years later is significant. In that monies that we got, they also gave us some additional responsibilities. They'd like us to already, we don't even have the program up and running yet, but they've already asked that we start considering some of the health professions council programs being transferred over to this type of Texas licensing system. So we don't even have our foundation feet underneath this yet. And the legislature has asked us to explore, it's actually a legislative bill, other programs may be coming to this new system. So that's another challenge that we have. It's hard to spend money before you have it. It's hard to decide where a path is going to go when we don't even have it underneath us. But again, we've been up to the challenge. We definitely can't do this work without y'all's help. So continuing the input, keeping us on our toes, challenging us, it's what we need to hear. So we're doing the best job that we can. That's all I have to add, unless there's any other questions.
Yes,
Mr. Wyatt, I'm sorry, Mr. Ravel, before Mr. Wyatt gets his comment in, I also did want to mention something that could affect you guys. And ladies, if we get one on the board, but moving forward, we were given the authority to do interdisciplinary advisory boards. So your program and safety may touch on some of the same things that some of our driver education safety program may touch on. And if we have those issues in common, we do have that authority to develop sort of an ad hoc, not really ad hoc because we have that permission, but a smaller board pulling from each of the boards to touch on those issues. Another example I can think of is for our electricians and our air conditioner repair folks. They have some of the same codes they use versus having all of the members meet separately and then come together. We do now have the authority to develop interdisciplinary boards to handle it and then bring back to the individual boards. So with that, I think we've just about covered it. Mr. Wyatt, I'm sorry for interrupting.
Okay, Rick.
Sorry, I had to find the button. Rick Wyatt, Industry Representative, Motorcycle Safety Board. Just to go some clarification on the funding. Understand refused working on the skinny. Question is, does that mean there's no access to the Texas Motorcycle Fund that all licensed riders pay into? And does anyone by chance know what the current balance of that fund is? Lastly, how are we going to ever access that fund?
So I could probably get you that information pretty quickly. I don't have those numbers in front of me. As far as access, we do not currently have access. I expect somebody has access, but it is not this agency at this point. I don't believe TEEX or TTI have it either. So we will have to explore the next legislative session if we can try again as an exceptional item. Hopefully the consideration can be provided because it's hard to do more work with less money. But I think there is an expectation that we're trying to increase safety. So if I could, the budget people that we have working for us, if y'all could work behind the scenes to see if we can get that number, I'd appreciate it. If not, we will follow up with you, sir, right after the meeting.
And David, if I could jump in and add a little bit more substance to your response. This is
Thank you,
Derek
Derek.
Burkhalter, Assistant General Counsel. So TDLR has access to the fund, but only in the amount that the legislature appropriates that. So in other words, our funding for the program comes out of the fund, but that amount is set by the legislature, and we can't go above and beyond that to tap into the fund for any additional things like grants or contracts with TEEX or TTI. So everything we do has to come from that limited amount that's appropriated. And although there may be, millions of additional dollars in that fund, we can't tap anything beyond what the legislature allows us to have. And that was what we requested permission to get additional access to that. And that request was not accepted or was not adopted.
Jude?
Duke Chuck Snyder, Rider Rep, Motorcycle Safety Advisory Board. Derek, just for clarification, so the exceptional item request was for additional funds for General Revenue 0501. If it was additional funds, can you tell me how much was appropriated initially?
I cannot give you that number as I sit here. I would have to refer to some of our finance people to get you that exact number.
This is David Gonzalez. Jude, we can follow up with that information. If I can't get it before the end of the meeting, we'll have to follow up afterwards.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director. I just wanted to clarify that TDLR was appropriated some funding out of General Revenue 501.
Okay. Rick?
And just follow up, if and when we do get access, or TDLR gets access to the funds out of that, is there any guarantees that it won't be spread to other programs, or will it be solely dedicated to the motorcycle safety course and departments?
This is David Gonzalez. So there are never guarantees when everything's going through legislation and budgets. It gets approved by the legislature. So you've probably heard this term before. Making laws is sometimes a messy process. Some have alluded to it as being making sausage because there's so many different avenues and different places that the legislature's language can come from. But it would be our intention to focus on the motorcycle safety program. The motorcycle education fund account is one of those things that if they provide access to it, if it goes beyond us, if it includes others, we wouldn't have control over that. But that would definitely be our focus for this program. It's the only one that we have other than driver education safety that focuses on these things.
And Mr. Wyatt, Mary Winston here. We have had other programs that have education funds that we've been legislated for. Auctioneer is one. And in that situation, the legislature directed those funds specifically for auctioneers. It is our anticipation that that would occur at this time as well, whenever that gets clear. Can't make a promise because it hasn't been done, but typically in the past, there is precedent that when there is this sort of fund, it is designated for this specific program.
Thank you, Mary. Are there other questions, comments on the funding? Okay, I've had a compadre question. The items that were inherited from the Department of Public Safety, the training motorcycles, the trailers, the training modules, the trucks, the ATVs, what happened to the money that was generated by the sale of those items? Did it go back into the Fund 501, or has it been used for other operational expense?
This is David Gonzalez, and I can speak to some of that. So TDLR took ownership of much of those properties, and those are actually in storage at this point. The sale is still like pending on some of these items. Some of the materials and equipment went to TEEX as well, so they could administer the programs that they were doing. So it was divided amongst the things that were inherited from DPS amongst the programs that were responsible.
Thank you. All right, and Keith Rovell, Advisory Board, I would like to make one additional comment. Perhaps when these legislative sessions are brought up again in the next session or these legislative meetings, the need for this needs to be stressed a bit more, and perhaps we on the board might be able to help with that. But in the year 2019 to 2020, fatalities did go up among motorcyclists quite substantially, a double-digit percentage. The majority of the people that died on motorcycles were unlicensed, probably uneducated. And as they nickel and dime this program, people are dying. And I'm hoping that we can get that fixed in the next session. And I appreciate all of your help with that.
Mr. Ravel, that brings us to, oh, I'm sorry, David?
I was just going to say, thank you for those comments, Providing
Yes.
Officer Ravel. I do know that Executive Office, including Mr. Brian Francis, looks at those numbers regularly.
Yes.
So we hear you loud and clear.
We are painfully aware, as everyone on the call is. And when we go sort of legislative session, bill implementation, but in the meantime, our minds are always on strategic planning. And
Yeah.
so that is planning for what we need next time. We don't wait. It's just we keep rolling it along. And Mr. Ravel, I think you brought up one of the very important things that needs to be top of our list. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any other comments for Mr. Gonzalez? Questions? All right. We will move on to item G on the agenda right now. This is a discussion and possible recommendations on the proposed amendments to the existing rules.
Mr.
And-
Ravel?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Scheck Snyder is patiently and quietly raising his hand.
May I? Yes, sir, please.
I hate to be such a disruption, Chairman Ravel, but I would like to request a short recess, sir.
Okay, yes, let's take a 10-minute recess. Clock is reading at 11:12 right now. We will resume the meeting in 10 minutes. We are back. It's been 10 minutes and we are ready to restart the meeting again. And Mary, you indicated that we do have some additional statistics and information coming in from Deputy Executive Director Gonzalez.
As Mary Winston, TDLR, continues to work through his audio issues, well, now he's circling, we don't know. But, and it's so odd, he's in the same building. We're just on opposite sides of the building, but that happens sometimes. We had one more item in the executive office report, and it's
Okay.
It's the communication outreach statistics,
Yes.
and that's just how many times the public has reached out on our website for information on your specific page for motorcycle and ATV operator safety. For the past 6 months, from January to July, this website has been reached 23,000 plus times, almost 24,000 times, an average of 131 times per day. 63% of those access this site from their desktop computers, 35% from a smartphone, and 2% from a tablet. And depending on which industry we're meeting with, that flip-flops. Some of our industries are smartphone all the way, but that lets us know what we need to do and how we need to have our front-facing web pages to appear. Top reasons for visiting the site: finding a motorcycle school, forms and publications, how to apply for a new motorcycle safety instructor license, motorcycle operator training and safety rules, and finally finding a licensed instructor. Those are the top 5. So those are the statistics I wanted to share with you, and we kind of keep an eye on that, and it lets our web team know, our public information officer know, and us as employees know how we need to present the information. If it's being effective, it just helps with that. I lastly wanted to say that Commissioner Callier got off of the meeting during the break, but she snapped in a few questions to echo some of your questions that we'll need to get back with you on. She appreciates being there to participate, even if it was remotely, and just wanted you to know that she was having to leave early. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mary. Folks, were there any questions about the statistics that we just saw? Comments? Anything you needed to address? Seeing none, okay, we will move on to item G now on the agenda. And these will be discussions and possible recommendations on the proposed amendments to existing rules at 16 Texas Administration Code, Chapter 98. Mary, do we need to read all the numbers out on that? No?
We do not need to read all those numbers out.
One.
We can get Derek to read them out.
There we go. We'll call on Derek. Lucky you, Derek. And there will be, in addition to all of those numbers, a proposed new rule at 98.116 regarding the motorcycle and ATV operator safety program. These proposed rules address new requirements for motorcycle schools, instructors, and courses. So Derek Burkhalter, Assistant General Counsel, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Rovell. Again, my name is Derek Burkhalter. I'm the Assistant General Counsel for TDLR. So this item we'll be discussing, this is a continuation of the discussion of the proposed rules that we went through in our last meeting together. Let me share my screen really fast. Let's see. Okay, so as was included in your meeting materials, we sent you this kind of proposed markup text and all the various public comments that we received. So these are the proposed rules that we published in the Texas Register on May 28th, and that began the 30-day public comment period, which ended on June 28th. And so as you saw, we received quite a few public comments. They kind of ran the spectrum. They included a lot of rules that we weren't actually proposing to change. And that may just kind of be a learning process about people who aren't familiar with this rulemaking process. But really what we're asking for are public comments on the rules that we've proposed. So the changes that we actually published, those are what we're seeking public comment on. So we got a lot of comments about other rules, about other changes people would like to see. And we do appreciate those comments, and we will take a look at them for future rulemakings. But for this process that we're going through right now, we have to narrowly focus in on the proposals that we made. So what we can do, basically staff has reviewed all of the public comments, and what I'll be showing you are staff's recommendations for changes to the proposed language in response to those comments. So as you see here, when you see red text that's double underlined, that is text that we're proposing that we add to the language. And if you see a double strike through, that's new stuff that staff is recommending that we remove. But this is all subject to our discussion here and subject to your ideas. Ultimately, at the end, you're going to be voting to hopefully recommend these to the commission for final adoption. So if there are any changes to our proposed language that you would like to see, we can definitely discuss that today. My presentation now is going to focus on the actual changes that we're recommending and the comments that kind of inspired those recommendations. I may touch on some highlights on some comments that we chose not to make changes in response to. While I'm going through this, feel free to interrupt me. I can't necessarily see everyone and whether they have a hand raised or anything like that. So if you have a comment that's relevant in the moment, please cut me off and we can talk about whatever's on your mind. So having said all that, I'll go ahead and begin. Hopefully everyone can see my screen, and hopefully it's large enough for everyone to read. Mary, I trust you'll let me know if that's not the case. So our first section is 98.10, dealing with definitions. And I'll scroll down slowly to not make you sick. So we were proposing a change to the definition of entry-level course. And our purpose was we wanted to make clear that even though it says entry-level, it also includes intermediate courses that can lead to someone getting their Class M license. And so we received actually several comments on this point. First of all, they wanted to see the word endorsement removed because under the driver's license statute, it's referred to as a Class M driver's license, and it doesn't really reference it as an endorsement. So we agreed with that comment. We think that's a good idea. We don't want to create confusion. So we're recommending to remove that phrase. And then instead of trying to explain what intermediate courses are, someone gave us a really good suggestion that we just add this phrase right here to say that it's a course for novice or experienced motorcycle riders. And so we think that probably makes it clear enough that we don't have to use the phrase intermediate course, which could create some confusion where there are intermediate courses that don't actually qualify one for a motorcycle license. So I'll, we agreed with that comment. You can see the changes that staff is suggesting that we make. So I'll go ahead and just give everyone a chance to respond if anyone has any thoughts about this change.
Mr. Burkholter, I don't need to tell you, you know better than I do that words matter here.
Absolutely.
It was a very long struggle to drag the Department of Public Safety and the Texas legislature into a new world back in 2009 when we made training mandatory, and in 2013 when we included one-day intermediate level training for licensing. It was a struggle. It took a lot of motorcycle riders down at the Capitol to make all this happen. We were successful, thankfully. And back in those days, the level or the statistics indicated that the number of motorcycle riders killed in crashes was about 65% or so, mid-60s% that were unlicensed and likely untrained. That was the reason why I personally worked so hard to get a one-day intermediate level training course available for riders in the state that would allow for licensing. The problem I see with the changes we have here is the semantics indicate entry-level course. So my fear is that we'll go back to the understanding that one course available for novice or experienced motorcycle riders give you the opportunity to gain your Class M driver's license. So semantics matter here. So my suggestion is that we just use the definition in plural. So it'd be entry-level courses, courses of instruction in motorcycle operation for novice or experienced motorcycle riders designed to meet the training requirements to attain a Class M driver's license issued under the applicable transportation code section. This just, in my mind, makes it a little bit more clear that the state of Texas has multiple courses available for novice and experienced riders to obtain their Class M license.
Okay, so if I understand you, you would like to change this word, a course, to plural, to say courses, and that would address your concern?
Yes, sir. And probably even in the definition saying entry-level courses rather than entry-level course.
Okay. I'm just gonna add a comment here to change that to courses. Are there any other thoughts on that? What I can tell you is the term entry-level course was used in the statute, which is why we chose that. I don't have a problem with making it plural. And if that fixes an ambiguity that you see, that's totally fine. What I can tell you is this was not something that our staff was confused about. I mean, we know that the intermediate courses qualify. This was just something, I think we were getting a lot of questions from the public and from schools. So we were just trying to clarify that ambiguity. So with that, I open up to any other thoughts, but I'm totally fine if the board is fine with making that change to plural.
Chris Litvin, advisory board member. Jude, I like your change, and I don't have a problem with it. And I would just say that probably not a whole lot of our target audience is going to be reading this text. And I think the marketing language that the sponsors put on their website to advertise the courses will probably be a lot more impactful on that. And I think we will, I mean, if we're good business operators, we will cater to our customers' needs and desires and market them effectively.
Okay, I'll go ahead and move on. So probably the biggest change for this rule package is that we are creating alternative eligibility requirements, essentially for out-of-state applicants, although you don't have to prove that you lived out of state. This was an attempt to kind of get around the problem the statute creates with the TEKS administered course for someone who's taken that exact same course or one equivalent to it, to require them to come in and take the course again before being able to teach in Texas. That wasn't a desirable situation, and so this language was kind of crafted to allow an alternative to avoid that unfortunate result. We haven't suggested any changes to the language here. We did get some comments indicating that people felt that either someone from out of state would become certified and then not have the opportunity to teach the course at least 6 times before they moved to Texas, or that if they had done that, then perhaps the jurisdiction or state that they lived in didn't keep track of the courses enough to be able to issue a statement saying that the instructor had actually completed teaching the course 6 times. And so when staff took a look at that, we acknowledged that, yeah, that is a possible issue. However, we have to have some standard as to, what makes someone qualified enough And based on our work group discussions and on our discussions at the last board meeting, you know, we kind of, I guess, settled on this having taught the course 6 times. And with that being the case, there has to be some way of proving they've taught the course at least 6 times. You know, so that the burden of proof is essentially has to fall on the applicant. You know, we can try to work with them and give them some guidance, but, you know, ideally they should be able to, if the state or jurisdiction doesn't keep track of those courses taught, hopefully the instructor can provide proof to that jurisdiction that satisfies them enough to be able to issue the letter. But if that's not the case, you know, we don't really, we couldn't come up with any alternative ways to prove that you had taught the course that, you know, doesn't require our licensing staff to just do a lot of work. You know, we have to try to streamline things as much as possible. So we're not recommending any changes based on those comments, but we acknowledge the issue raised by the comments. And if anybody has any suggestion for how to alter the language, then, you know, please let us know. Okay. There was a question about, so this is for the instructor preparation course. We just kind of fleshed out some of the requirements a little bit. Someone had commented that this does not include the requirement that the individual be at least 18 years old. And so our response to that is we're talking about eligibility to enroll in the course. And so it's possible that, you know, with TEAC scheduling the course so far out, you know, in October right now, you know, someone could be 17 years old at the time that they enroll for the course and then have reached the age of 18 by the time they take the course. So we didn't want to impose that as an eligibility requirement, but TEACS does require the individual to be 18 years of age. So there's that sort of accommodation for someone whose birthday falls in between the enrollment date and the actual attendance date. And so that's why we didn't add it to this section here. I just wanted to sort of explain that. Additionally, I'm going to scroll back up a little bit and address another comment we received. Someone had submitted a comment asking that we take out the requirement that an applicant have held a driver's license for the previous 2 years because, you know, we need instructors and we can't be that choosy at this point. Unfortunately, that requirement is in the statute. And so even though we've kind of restated it in our rule, we can't just remove that requirement. The legislature determined that has to be there. And so we don't have the ability to remove that. Okay, so for the instructor license term renewal, we had proposed language that would have essentially carved out a grandfather clause for the DWI prohibition. You'll remember if we scroll back up, we're adding the new requirement that an individual not have been convicted during the preceding 7 years of one of these DWI crimes. We had tried to carve out a grandfather clause to make sure that someone who's already licensed isn't going to be penalized by imposing this new rule and just lose their license because of it. But there were comments that were really critical of the grandfather clause and, you know, basically if you can do it for this, why not do it for everything else? We took a look at that and we basically determined that this new requirement wouldn't actually eliminate any current licensees because DPS would not have allowed those individuals to become licensed anyway. And there were so few applicants between the program transfer and the time this rule would go into effect that we agree with the comment and we think we can remove this without any sort of negative fallout to the public. So that's another one of our suggested changes. So now we're dealing with the section on instructor responsibilities. We had made some modifications here. So we got a comment that was really insightful that that caught the fact that this section we're referencing here. Further on down, we changed that to subpart E. And so just making that correction in the cross-reference to make sure that the rule is effective. And then here on 15, the comment recommended a change to how this particular piece is phrased. They wanted it to match the language of new 98.108 subsection E, just for consistency, so it's not creating a different standard. And we agreed with that change as well. So we're recommending changing that phrase as well to match that section. I see your hand up, Chris.
Yes,
Mr. Litfin.
thanks, Derek. Chris Litfin, Advisory Board Member. When I read this, it says, when participating in on-cycle portion of the course. And the first thought I had was, that's the range portion versus the classroom portion. So maybe I'm taking it out of context or I have the wrong interpretation of this, but the time that you want your students to be wearing the protective gear is when they're on the vehicle. If they're on the on-cycle portion of the course and they're being debriefed or they're watching a demo, they don't need to be wearing all their gear. I may be off base in my interpretation of this, but if you consider the on-cycle portion, when we talk to customers, we say we have the classroom portion and the riding portion. And they definitely don't need to wear their gear during all the riding portion of the course while they're on the range, especially in the heat of the summer. So that would be my concern, is that how do you define on-cycle portion of the course? If it's literally defined that when you're on a cycle, then I'm perfectly good with it. If it's the on-cycle portion of the course is the riding portion, then not all the riding portion do we require the students to wear their gear.
And that's a really good point. And I think staff, we kind of agreed that on cycle means while you're on the motorcycle. And another difference that the comment pointed to is that this would actually require them to have the gear on while they're on the motorcycle, but the motorcycle is turned off. Whereas the old language we're scratching out here would say whenever riding a motorcycle. And so that might imply that you didn't have to wear the gear while you were on the bike with the bike turned off. So we think this language is an improvement because it requires them to do it while they're on the motorcycle, whether they're riding it or not. And I take your point as to the ambiguity, but I think our staff is perfectly clear that we're talking about that on cycle means while the student is on the motorcycle and not merely just out on the range.
I appreciate the improvement from whenever riding the motorcycle, and I agree with that. I just wish the language said what you just said, whenever they're on the motorcycle, instead of the on-cycle portion. But I'm not terribly offended with it as long as that's your understanding and that's how it's going to be interpreted by TDLR.
Okay, should we maybe change it to say when the students are on the motorcycle?
What do the rest of the board members think?
So this is Michael Manser. I'm just thinking on-cycle activities of the course. Just changing that one word from portion to activities may help.
I mean, to me, it's completely clear the way Derek said it. Whenever you're on the motorcycle, the only concern with that language is that we have three-wheel vehicles.
Would a three-wheel vehicle not be considered as a motorcycle?
Yes, probably.
Jack Snyder, Rider Rep. I agree with Dr. Manser. I think just changing portion to activities clears it up pretty well.
Robert Richmond, I agree with Dr. Manzer as well. And I think that also includes the three-wheeler too. I think that it would be all encompassing there.
Michael Cron. So by law and definition, a three-wheeler is considered a motorcycle. So I believe it would be covered there.
Well, not all three-wheelers are, but all the three-wheelers that are in our program are. So I appreciate that.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead, and it sounds like we have at least more people saying activities than not at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and note that change.
I think that addresses my concern. Thank you.
And then if we do that, then we also want to go to the text in 98.108E that it references. And we want to make that change there as well. So let's see. So, okay, participating in the on-cycle portion of the course. So we would just change this as well to say activities. Okay. Just a second. Okay, let me scroll back up to where we were. Okay, so with those changes, any other comments on 98.70?
Rick Wyatt,
Yes, sir.
Rick Wyatt, Motorcycle Safety Advisory Board member. Question on the protective gear. Is it defined in here? I saw one of the comments stating something about if we make the change where coaches would quote unquote wear t-shirts back and forth. My understanding is it's currently long sleeve shirts or jackets as upper protective gear.
Correct. So it's referring to the gear required by 98.108E. And if we scroll down there, we see a long sleeve shirt or jacket. So that would just apply that same standard.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on 98.70? Okay. One of the comments, so we're on 98.100, which is training site requirements. We propose to add a new subsection B that says subsection A3, which talks about a classroom, does not require a classroom to be a physical building and does not prohibit a virtual classroom conducted online. There was a comment that suggested, well, if you're going to allow that, then would there be some sort of a requirement that if the classroom part is done like out on the range, that there has to be a protection from the elements. You know, staff looked at that comment and we didn't recommend a change based on that. You know, if someone can do the training on the range and the weather's okay, then surely they could do the, you know, if they wanted, they could do the classroom portion out there. But if the weather wasn't sufficient, that may just have to be a business decision to, you know, kind of just use common sense. But that may not be something that rises to the level of needing regulation by the state. Any thoughts about that point? Okay, 98.104, student admission requirements. We're adding a new subsection D here. And you'll remember we had some conversation at the last board meeting, so that we're talking about when the school must inform individuals of the school's policy about retests of the writing skills test and the knowledge examination. And the requirement that someone whose performance creates a danger must be removed from the course. And so if those things are going to be required to be conveyed to the student, when must it be done? Our prior language said prior to admitting an individual. It wasn't clear, you know, what does it mean to admit them? At what point is admission complete? So staff recommends changing that to prior to accepting payment from an individual for admission to a course. You know, we think the crucial point is when the student pays their money and they ought to know what they're paying for before they do that. And so we think that provides a little bit more clear of a standard as to what point in time this information must be conveyed. Any thoughts on that? Okay. And specifically with regard to this subpart D1, you know, there was a comment that if you're going to require them to say how many attempts they'll get, should you also be required to tell the student if there will be any associated fees for the retest? And we agreed with that comment. We think, you know, if you're going to, you know, you don't have to charge a fee for this, but if you're going to, that needs to be a part of your the information you provide the student ahead of time. Yes, Mr. Lippman.
I have a lot of problems with this section number 1. I don't have any desire to publicly document how many attempts I'm going to give a student to retake the knowledge test or the writing test. I feel like that's wholly at the discretion of the writer coach and based on extenuating circumstances at the time of the class. If I publish that I'm going to give you 2 or 3 times to take it, then I have to give everybody 2 or 3 times to take it. And if you were, if the coach thinks that there's no reason, no extenuating circumstances why you should be retest, or if there is no good hope that you will be successful in a retest, then I don't want to offer a retest. If the coach in his discretion thinks that there is definitely extenuating circumstances that might make it beneficial to the student to offer them a retest, then I would like them to offer them the retest, and that's highly discretionary. And I don't know that I mean I don't want to publish I'm going to give you a certain number of retests for everyone. That seems not to make sense to me.
And my response would be that what you just stated would fit within this. We're not saying you have to give a number, but if your policy is that it's up to the instructor's discretion, then just tell the student that that's what the policy is.
Okay.
So we're just asking you to make clear up front, you know, whatever the policy is, whether it be a number, whether it be up to the school or the instructor, they just need to know what that is before they pay their money.
Well, just like our last conversation about the point, what you just said makes perfect sense to me, but what's written down in the document doesn't seem to jive with that. It literally says the school's policy regarding how many attempts the school allows a student to make. That to me says that I have to put a number on it. How many? If you're okay with me just saying the school and the coaches and their at their discretion may allow retests based on extenuating circumstances at the time of the class, then that's great. But that's not how I read number 1. It says school's policy regarding how many attempts the school allows a student to pass the course and associated fees, and it acts like I have to publish that. So could we clarify that language to just say the school has to publish their policy on if and when retests may be allowed, as opposed to how many?
I see Mr. Strawn had his hand up. Do you have a comment?
I was going to follow up on Mr. Lippen's comment there. Could we strike where it says, I'm sorry, it moved, where it was how many, and just instead of the school's policy regarding how many, and just say the school's policy regarding any attempts? I think that may get us to Mr. Lippman's point. Because then the policy could be that they have no attempts as well, or leave it to the discretion of the writer coach, as Mr. Lippman suggested.
Thank you, Michael. That's a good point, because you're right. It may be no attempts.
Okay, so we would just take out how many and we would just replace that with any. So it would say the school's policy regarding any attempts the school allows students to make to pass the exam and skills test and any associated fees. Mr. White?
Rick White, Motorcycle Safety Advisory Board. And should it be and or for the knowledge exam and or the writing skill test?
Let's see. Well, we would want them to give a standard for both of them, even if the standard is you get no extra attempts, right? I mean, if we say or, then someone could say, well, I told you how many attempts you get for the knowledge examination, and the rule just says or, so I've satisfied that. In other words, this and extends to the policy, stating the policy. You have to state your policy for the exam and for the writing skills. Even if your answer to either one of them is none, you would still want both of those policies stated. I don't know if that, I mean, I see your point. We don't want to imply that you're required to have any re-attempts, but I guess I'll open it up for any other thoughts on that.
The way I was reading it is they failed one but not both. The way I'm reading it is they have to take both the knowledge and the writing skill again. That's why I was suggesting the and or.
Okay. So we would just be changing and to and/or. Any other thoughts on that change?
Could you just make them independent, Michael Strawn, education examination? Could you make them independent thoughts as just attempts the school allows students to make to pass the knowledge examination, comma, the writing skills test required for the course, comma, and any associated fees, and then it just leaves them as independent thoughts and not combination, or to your point, where you could exempt yourself from one because it says or.
Okay. So
instead of the and, you would just put the comma.
okay, does that work for everyone? So we would say the school's policy regarding any attempts the school allows students to make to pass the knowledge examination, the writing skills test required for the course, comma, and any associated fees. Okay. Concerning D2, we received a comment saying, basically, if they're going to be removed from the course at any point, then they're not going to be able to take the test, in which case, of course, they would not be entitled to additional attempts. We thought that was kind of a good point. I mean, really, you just need to let the student know that if their performance creates an unmanageable danger on the range, they will be removed from the course. And given that, it's not necessary to address additional attempts to pass the test when they've already been removed from the course. So we agreed with that comment. We think that the phrase we're removing here is kind of redundant and unnecessary. So for clarity and brevity, we think that's a good change. Mr. Liffin?
Yes, Derek, thank you. Chris Litfin, advisory board member. I'm not sure where I need to make this comment. I guess it's kind of tied up in D1 and 2. Maybe I should have brought it up in D. Prior to accepting payment from an individual, I like all those changes. My condition is when we sign someone up on the internet, they have to go through a click through, and I can add all these things to the click through. Not a problem. I can put one thing or a million things on there, and I can have a whole laundry list, and I like it. But when I'm signing people up on the phone, it takes a long time, and I only have so many people answering the phone, and calls come in spurts, and sometimes I have 2 or 3 people waiting, and it takes over 5 minutes to get somebody signed up on the phone by capturing their information, capturing their payment information, and then we already go through a laundry list of things. Make sure you bring all your stuff. This is your required gear. Make sure you're on time. Please read your confirmation. And now we're adding several more things to this. We're having to inform, well, and this is, I'm asking for a clarification. Inform regarding the policy on knowledge retests, how many times, whether if there'll be a cost, writing skill test, informing them that it's at the writer coach's discretion if they become dangerous. My point is, it becomes unwieldy at some point, and there's a lot of information that the student needs to know before they take this course. Would it be acceptable, instead of adding these things to the list of things that we must tell them verbally on the phone, that this be published on our flyers and on our website and included in the confirmation that we send the student? I mean, I don't want to hide this information from them. I mean, there's more things than this that we could add to the things. And kind of as a corollary to this comment, if this is a phone call, I mean, there's really no, I think one of the comments you received in email was, what constitutes acceptance of the customer of this? I mean, if we tell them this over the phone, A, there's really no record of that, and B, there's no acceptance of that. On the website, it's easy, it's clear cut. We can list all these things in the click-through agreement, and we can have you check the box that you've read it and understand it. There's confirmation of it, there's proof of it, and we've done it. But over the phone, it gets lengthy, and like I say, if I have 2 or 3 people on hold and it's already taken me 5 minutes to deal with a customer, everything we add to that, customers, we can't really expect them to wait 5, 10, 15 minutes online.
Have a good day.
So I'm just trying to see if we can, if that could be a business decision on what we tell them on the phone, as long as we're making it painfully aware to them that they're doing it through other means, like what's in our flyers, what's on our website, and what we send to them in an email when they sign up. The email, I understand, is post-payment. But I mean, we could even put in some language that if upon receipt of the email, you have X number of hours to cancel at no penalty, would be helpful.
Okay.
Sorry for the rambling comment, but it's a
No.
business process. Just like in the same vein as you guys try to do for yourselves, like when we have an audit, you really like, I mean, you can't spend all day with us for us to provide things and dig things out of folders, and we have to have it ready and presented. This is kind of a bottleneck for us when people call on the phone, and we're trying to educate them and make sure they're aware of everything they need to be successful before they come. These are just, one more thing that we have to tack on, but 2 or 3 more things.
I guess my response would be that as long as you provide the information and you feel that it's clear in your mind, you can point to however it was that was provided to the student ahead of time. Then at the point the student actually pays you, that's the student's acceptance of your policy. The way this is going to come up with the department is we're going to receive a complaint from a student who said, I was kicked out of this course and nobody told me that could happen. And so we're going to address that complaint with you. And if you can, whatever process you have in place that you feel comfortable, I can show to the department or anyone who's complaining that this information was provided to you. I mean, whatever that process is that you're comfortable with, that's fine. We're not trying to tell you exactly how to do it. It's just the principle here is we don't want anyone to be caught by surprise and pay for something that they didn't understand. So we're not trying to be overly prescriptive in how to do it. So given that, what are the thoughts?
The thought is, I like what you just said a lot better than what I'm reading. So I appreciate that. And I understand kind of the motivation of it. And you kind of explained that that's the purpose of this being here, is just like you said, the rubber's going to meet the road when the student calls you in and say, hey, I got expelled from this class and I didn't even know this was a problem. And then you're going to come back to me and say, show me that you made this person aware before you took their money that this is how it worked. I get that. So, and I know you're not in the enforcement division, but I mean, so let's play that through just a little bit. I mean, the TDLR gets a call and says, hey, I was, let's take number 2, right? Hey, I was removed from class before I was even done. The coach said I was a danger to myself, and I expected I would get the whole class. I paid for the whole class, and the coach threw me out after, half a day on the motorcycle, said I wasn't safe. So then and he says, I was never made aware of this. And if I go back and show you that it says that on my flyer and it says that on my website, and it says it in the confirmation that you signed up for the class 2 weeks ago, and you never called me and said, hey, I just read your confirmation. It said I could be removed from class before I'm even done. You never called me and said that. You went to the class and you had this experience. Do you think that would be a legitimate defense on my part that I made it abundantly clear to the student through the website, the flyer, and the confirmation?
Mr. Strawn, do you have any input on this subject?
Absolutely. So, I mean, from an auditing standpoint, where we go out, I mean, our basis here is to look for if this customer was supplied that information. I hear Mr. Lipman and the regulatory burden that sounds like this language as written may put on them for their over their phone portion of it. The intent is, I guess, that the customer has provided this information and that we are able to see that that information was provided. So I hear and I understand his concern as far as accepting payment. I would feel comfortable if the board wanted to move forward with changing that to some language to kind of go where Mr. Lipton was suggesting, as far as confirmation, maybe even if it's before attending the class, if we wanted to move it that way. The idea was that they're presented this information as soon as possible. The phone does create a hard paradox there. The website, as Mr. Lipton was saying, is very easy. It's ahead of time. Maybe it's as far as some clarification that they're notified on the phone of it, and then sent, on the phone, they're sent the details of it afterwards, and their confirmation letter. There might be a better, given the concerns from this, as we've also saw with what Mary was talking about earlier, with the user base here being more driven towards PCs and using telephones, and we've heard from the advisory board members not really using their cell phones to bring certificates. We may need to reconsider how that is written.
Maybe we can say prior to a payment becoming non-refundable.
Do we lock ourselves into then having a refund policy for the schools by that language?
Well, that would put the burden on the school to have a refund policy where basically your payment is refundable until this information has been provided to you, I think. I don't know. I'm just trying to think outside the box.
I like your thought process, but let me counter that a little bit. Again, it's so different between online signups and phone signups. So if we sign up someone on the phone and then we send them their confirmation and they have an issue with it, I would have no problem giving them a full refund if they call me back within an hour or so and they read the confirmation and found out it wasn't what they expected. That's fine. But to put that in a policy, if you sign, if at Friday at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, you sign up for a weekend class because we have seats available for tomorrow morning and the office is all gone home, then I don't have an opportunity to refund you because I won't be back in the office until after the class is over. So there's a lot of moving parts there and complications. I kind of like what Michael said, to the point was, or maybe I could massage it a little bit and say that you will be made aware at the time of purchase or, shortly thereafter. And I don't know how to say that right, but we always send out a confirmation right after we sign you up. Within an hour, has all that stuff in there, and we do make them aware. In general, like I said, there's a lot of things that we need to inform them of so that they're successful and informed in the class. And we always tell them, we're sending you all this information and a lot more in a confirmation. Please read it as soon as you get it and call us if you have any questions. And these are just some of the many things that they need to be aware of. So we do that, but we don't obviously read the entire. It's a 2-page confirmation. If it's hot, bring water, prepare yourself. These are the acceptable, safe, clothing that you need to bring. And we expound on that, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, that you can be removed from the class at the rider coach's discretion. All these things, there's just a lot to go through. So.
I mean, Michael Strawn, TDLR, is it possible, Derek, that during this rule here, and we haven't really done it anywhere else, but that you could have a requirement ahead of time for online or, those types of signups. But if over the phone, they must be provided a confirmation email containing this information, and that's how we delineate the two, is that every other time I've done that, and then carve out over the phone, they must receive a confirmation email within 24 hours, let's say, or something, notifying them of these same requirements. Is that a possibility?
That would address my concerns.
So how would we amend the language to do that?
Prior to accepting payment from an individual for admission to entry in a class over the internet, the school must provide the following, and then have a separate section that says if students are registered for class over the phone, all this information must be provided within some period of time by confirmation. I don't know. I'm open to suggestion.
So Derek, I would suggest you would probably end up here with a lowercase d. Then you're going to have a 1, which is going to be the caveat for online signups, and then those two, and then you're probably going to have a, the A and the B, large A, large B, which is going to be our now 1 and 2, and then you're going to have a 2, which is going to then explain the process for over the phone, stating that referencing, D Was that going to be D1A and B, need to be supplied in a confirmation email? That would be the structure I think I would write here. I hope it made sense. I think you answered.
I actually like that suggestion better, to just leave it as it is and then maybe put like basically a disclaimer below it that says, in the case of over the phone signups, this may be accomplished within 60 minutes by way of confirmation email to the student, or something like that, or by way of offline communication to the student. I don't want to get too, like you said, too particular in prescribing the means of it, but maybe just say, in case of phone registration, this may be accomplished within X number of minutes with offline communication to the student, something to that effect.
Okay.
Sorry, I think maybe we're getting a little bit long on this one item, but
Well, Mary Winston, TDLR, my concern is not getting long. It's that Derek has just this really difficult responsibility and job of not getting into your business practices, yet providing workable rules. And I just want to remind, so Derek, I'm rooting for you over here. I just want to remind everybody that I'm not currently in enforcement. I started in enforcement, and as an attorney, you have a reasonable standard. We've talked about if we have it on the website, if we have it in some materials, if we have it here, if we have it there. So this is all really good. But if you're doing all of that and providing that information, um, and adding this in, someone is going to reasonably be expected to know some of this, right? But I know on a phone call, it's nothing, there's no record. So someone can say, oh, they didn't tell me this. So I definitely know why we're going into this. But I know Derek's just trying to balance that. We don't want to tell you how to run your business, but we want to provide those safeguards.
Mary, would you maybe suggest that we change the language to something that says that you must make all reasonable efforts to make sure the student is aware of this before signing up? And then the reasonable efforts could be your website, your flyer, the confirmation, as opposed to being so specific about these things?
I'm going to defer to Derek as far as if that's too vague, if that's because that's something we've discussed in real life about this will be here, this will be there, this information. But if we're going towards this more specific language, I'm fine with it. I just don't want to kind of hem him up to having to dip in too much. It sounds like you all are working through it.
Keith Ravel, Advisory Board. Somebody made the idea a little while ago, rather than saying prior to accepting payment from, prior to making payment non-refundable. Could you do that when they are signing the waivers and student information form at the beginning of class? We do that now. If we have an individual come into one of ours who flat out, and it's rare, but it happens, somebody just says, I'm not signing this waiver and indemnification form. Our standard company policy is very good. An immediate, thank you very much. We refund them immediately and they may leave. So no pressure is put on them or anything else. But could we simply make it at that point when we are going over the rules, when the student information form, the waivers, the indemnification forms are signed, to let people know once these are signed, no additional refunds are possible and that you are accepting all conditions contained therein? Could we do that?
Well, Keith, how would you address no-shows in that case?
Good point.
Yeah, it's a complicated thing. I mean, I'd be fine if we want to offline this because it could get longer.
If we left the rule as we have it right now, I mean, would it be, would it be possible to just leave it the way we have it and then see if problems arise and then fix it in the future? Or is this definitely something that we need to address? I mean, I'm just trying to think of various ways to do it, and we don't want to stray too far from the verbiage we have here. Otherwise, we're kind of creating a new rule, which we're kind of limited as to the changes we can make right here at this point in the game. Maybe we just, let's see. Maybe we just add a part F down here and say, if the information provided pursuant to subsection D is provided, or let's see, if registration is performed over the phone, the information required by subsection D must be provided to the individual in a confirmation statement no later than, what is a good time period?
60 minutes? I don't know.
No,
I would need longer than that, Chris.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
24 hours?
Yes.
How about not putting a time limit on it and saying if it must be provided
In a timely manner.
before when they can still have a refund.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't say that well, but you see what I'm saying? Must be
Yeah.
provided. And I would maybe suggest to the customer, and I wouldn't even put in the word confirmation. I like where you're going, Derek. I would just say if registration is performed by telephone, the information required by Section D must be provided to the individual or customer before it is before the. Here's where I'm at a loss for words. Before it's too late to get a refund,
Okay.
provided to the customer in time so that they may be informed before it is too late for them to get a refund or something to that effect. I like it. It's really close to where I'd like to see it.
Okay.
I like that. Yeah, before payment becomes non-refundable. There you go. That's much more clean.
And Derek, Michael Strawn, TDLR. Derek, this is getting to kind of where I was going earlier, but it carves out an F rather than restructuring D. I would also suggest, since we were going this route, that I thought in D we were striking verbally because everything we're saying at this point in time is written confirmation, and I think that verbally no longer coincides with that.
So if you do it over the phone, will you be able to, I guess, just email them a statement and that will be covered? Okay.
That's what F is pointing to. And then from auditing standpoint, it's always cleaner than somebody saying, yeah, I did it. You have the email confirmation that's sent for that individual. And also it protects the school as well from somebody saying, oh, they never provided me that. And then it's a he said, she said, and the burden of proof is going to be on the school to show that they did do that should a case go to enforcement.
And this makes a requirement for the school to do it in writing.
Yes, and I like that, and it's good, and welcome to input from the other board members. But we send them their link for the e-course by email. So if they take the e-course, we know that we send all these things to the same email address. So we know when we talk to them on the phone, we say we're going to send you an email confirmation. If you don't get it, give us a call. And we know if they come to the class and if they have their e-course done, that they received emails at that email address, and we always send it to that email address. And as Michael said and Mary said, this gives us, he said, she said on the phone verbally, right? But if we've sent them that email confirmation, we have record of it. And we have a reasonable expectation that they got it because they completed the e-course that was sent to the same email address, and they showed up at the class at the right time because it was sent to the same email address. So this is a very auditable, easily definable burden of proof that it's a lot harder to have discrepancies with this than the verbal confirmation. This way we can show TDLR exactly what we sent them and have a reasonable expectation that it was received because other emails were received at the same email address. So yes, I'm pleased with where this is going. I think we're making, in my opinion, positive changes that make it more easily enforced and more clear cut and more manageably implemented by us for business processes.
Okay, great. A similar sort of issue is in subsection E here. So we had the similar issue prior to admitting an individual. What does that mean? So we're suggesting we just strike that phrase and say a motorcycle school must inform each student in writing of the department's information for purpose of directing complaints. And so, this is really just to give them information on how they could file a complaint if something goes wrong. I don't think there's necessarily a point in time this has to be provided, as long as it's provided at some point. Even if it's at the end of the course. So that was our thoughts on this. It's the department's information. It doesn't have to be provided before payment becomes non-refundable or anything like that, because the department's information isn't going to change someone's decision to take the course or not. So just as long as it's provided at some point, we think that's adequate. Okay, sounds like no objections. I just want to read through this and just to make sure we're all clear on the changes that we're agreeing to right now, because we're going to have to vote on this later. So subsection D will be amended to say, prior to accepting payment from an individual for admission to an entry-level course, a motorcycle school must inform the individual in writing of 1, the school's policy regarding any attempts the school allows students to make to pass the knowledge examination, comma, the writing skills test required for the course, comma, and any associated fees, and subsection 2, the requirement that a student whose writing performance creates an unmanageable danger on the range as determined by the instructor must be removed from the course. Subsection E will say a motorcycle school must inform each student in writing of the department's name, mailing address, telephone number, and website address for the purpose of directing complaints to the department. And we would be adding a new subsection F that says if registration is performed by telephone, the information required by subsection D must be provided to the individual before the payment becomes non-refundable. Any objections to that language from anybody?
Jeff offered advisory board. I have a question for Ford real quick. As far as inspections go, when we would come to be audited, if this ever went to enforcement, how would we be able to prove that that particular student did agree to these terms, or that they were provided these terms? How would we be able to prove it?
Michael Strawn, TDLR. Mr. Alford, it's a good question. Typically, something like this, we're going to make sure the policy is in place, not really on every single student. Obviously, somebody signed up online or they signed up in person, and you had their contract or their application or whatever all in front of you. That's a part of that. We're going to see it at that point in time. A lot of this goes to protecting the school and to making sure that they have this policy in place, that should there become a discussion or a discretion between those parties, the school, we can say that we've seen the policy, you all have confirmation of the email and everything else. But it's at this time not on our auditing list to go through. We would look at it to make sure you have the policy to confirm with the law. We may check a handful of records, and if that's done over the phone, we'd have the email confirmation that you could pull up. Or like I said, in person, you would have the application there as well. I hope that answered your question.
Yes. The other question that was raised as you were talking was about proxies, people who sign up for other people, parents who sign up children, assistants who sign up their bosses, or whatever the situation is. I'm not sure how that works legally when they agree to terms and conditions that they've never seen because someone will sign them up. I don't want to make something out of nothing here, but that's something that happens all the time.
My response would be if you've given someone the legal authority to sign you up, essentially contract for you, then you've also given them authority to receive the necessary information on your behalf.
Perfect.
Agreed.
Okay, you're okay with that, Mr. Alford?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Any other concerns before we move along? And as we've noted before, we're going to change this part E to activities to be consistent with our prior change.
Mr. Burkholder,
Yes, sir.
Jeff Alford, TDL Advisory Board. What is our records retention requirement for in inspections or discrepancies that someone would raise? How long would we have to keep the email records and such things for?
Let me check to see what our rule says. Unless someone from staff has that on hand.
I believe that it is 3 years, but I'm confirming real quick. Sorry, we have a lot of programs. They get this.
Right. The only reason I ask is that we keep all the forms, we keep all the incident reports, we keep everything. It's all part of the folder. But this is something that is not a part of the folder. It's not a printed document that we retain. So just how long we need to keep electronic records for, because if someone goes out and clears their inbox, I don't kill everything.
9872 under school responsibilities, 16 is 3 years for records of courses conducted and individuals who receive completion certificates. So if you had somebody that was a no-show, it's not falling into that, but maintaining for 3 calendar years at that point.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, moving on to 98.112, and these are the curriculum standards for entry-level courses. We had a comment asking whether the knowledge examination should be required to be taken in person. Staff looked at that and decided that that might be a good change, but I don't know for those of you who utilize the online classroom portion if that would create problems for you. I don't know if if the exam is usually conducted in person for those, or if that's usually done online. So I'm looking to the board members for some feedback on this.
Jeff Alford, Advisory Board. I had spoke with MSF representatives not too long ago, and they're developing a curriculum that is entirely online. There is no more classroom required. Obviously, Texas has a testing requirement for license examination and licensing issuance. So the in-person part may be the only issue being added if Texas ever decides to go to a more online transition, as we know that a lot of things are these days. So it could create an undue burden.
Okay.
Chris Litvin, Advisory Board member. This kind of goes back to a previous item on the rule changes where we talked about providing lighting, climate protection on the range if the classroom was, I forget the details, but we are not going to be able to online the writing portion. And if we needed to just have the test performed in person, and if that was allowed to be performed at the range, that might be a little tricky in the wind and the rain, but I think it would be still something we could do. Also, this isn't something that exists yet, so we don't want to hem ourselves into something. But Derek, a question for you is, I mean, if in the future Texas decides to approve a new curriculum that has an online only classroom, we could amend these rules at that time?
I mean, if we can, of course, it's a very long process, as you see, of changing the rules. So if we anticipate that that's going to be something that's going to be coming, and I know given with COVID and everything, the more we can do things online, I think the state is generally embracing that concept. Go ahead.
Good, very good point on the lead time for rule changes. So maybe we don't want to hem ourselves in. I think most of us are. There was a comment about the validity of people checking through on the checkbox for people who are signing other people up. And I think some rider coaches are aware that it seems that some of the people who are in the class may not have done the e-course themselves based on their performance on the test. So as kind of a proxy for the state of Texas and someone in charge of basically approving someone to get a motorcycle license, I'm a little bit hesitant to not have somebody in person for the test. I mean, I'm kind of putting my stamp that you've accomplished this, and then you can walk into a license branch and get a license with no further testing. I guess this is a question for the state of Texas. Do you want to allow people to complete this test online where we don't necessarily know that it's you and we don't verify your ID and see your smiling face in our class before we let you take the test? That's not going to be my decision. I just implement the program, but that's my concern.
I think for driver education, we do allow it, but we basically make them have procedures to confirm the individual's identity for the online portion. And so if this needs to be addressed, potentially we can add something like that. You know, if the course is done completely online, the course provider must have some sort of procedures in place to confirm the individual's identity. Or we can just leave it silent and go back to the way it was and just see if it's becoming a problem, and then we can address it later.
Michael Strong, TDLR. Yes, and Derek, you're correct. So in driver education, there are both content validation and personal validation questions. Personal validation questions are there to make sure who's sitting in front of the computer is who they say they are, asking questions from your history. Content is to make sure you're paying attention to what's going on, answering questions about that content. There was concern, as you heard Derek saying, about the fact that if you went completely online, the schools would have no idea that this individual actually informed or knows any knowledge before they came in and were on a motorcycle for range day instruction. So that was a concern. Also, on the other side of it, we have moved towards language that allows for online courses. So this may be counterintuitive to that per board member's presentation.
Michael, in the case of rider education, does the curriculum provider provide that mechanism to verify the person's identity with the questions?
Correct. Inside of the whoever the course provider is, their curriculum itself set up online. You know, multiple schools may refer to that or subcontract to use that curriculum, but that curriculum itself has these mechanisms built into it.
So I'm thinking maybe we can reject this change and instead add to the end the phrase "and to ensure the student's identity." So it would say include a knowledge examination that is designed to ensure students comprehend important concepts covered in the curriculum and to ensure the student's identity. So design would carry over. So it would say, basically, effectively, it would say it's designed to ensure the student's identity.
My concern is, as a course provider, I don't have any way to do that for an online. So if the curriculum provider provides a mechanism for that, then I'm good. But if they don't, so I don't know where this question goes. Is the state of Texas may not want to approve an online curriculum that doesn't include student verification of identification? Because if the state of Texas approves a virtual classroom and then leaves this requirement in there, then I'm responsible for the requirement and I have no mechanism to do that. That's my only concern.
So Mary Winston, I'm sorry, Derek, just to clarify, the in-person part that came from the comments from public and licensees, and currently that's the standard for in-person. But in anticipation of that changing, we are trying to manipulate this now in that anticipation. Is that what we're doing?
That's correct. Yes. So we would, so this proposed change would be removed. We would reject that change. And to answer your question, Chris, this rule is for the department's approval of new curriculum going forward. So
Very good.
this is not
Thank
the
you for that
standard.
clarification.
The school would have to do the course in accordance with the approved curriculum, but this is the standard imposed on the curriculum provider. They would have to have, if we add this language, they would have to have, it would have to be designed to ensure verification of the student's identity, or I guess provide verification.
Very, very good. I appreciate that clarification, and that clears it up for me. Thank you.
Does this new language work for you, Ford? Provide verification of the student's identity, or is there a better way to phrase that?
It does, but at the same time, it doesn't create any standards of what that looks like or be acceptable. So kind of just, not that I necessarily need to determine how they do that. They could have somebody send a copy of an ID, whatever, or do as driver education does as well. But I just worry if it opens us up to interpretation of what that looks like, especially if we're going to be approving a curriculum. There usually needs to be a standard as to what that concept then looks like. And I worry that leaving it so open-ended may put a burden on our staff here, trying to state what that mechanism looks like when approving a new curriculum. And this may be something of a bigger discussion as far as where motorcycle training and courses are going and developing into. That it may need to be a work group discussion.
Okay, it sounds like you're kind of proposing that we pull this whole concept at this point.
I did not know if I could propose something, but I've given the nature of this and the complexity of what a mechanism like this may look like, and the impact that we could have on future courses and even current curriculum, I think that may be the best solution at this point in time, but I'll defer to our advisory board.
That sounds reasonable to me.
So we would be deleting this suggested language, and we would be rejecting the in-person change, and it would just say, include a knowledge examination that is designed to ensure students comprehend important concepts covered in the curriculum. I mean, by saying it's designed to ensure students comprehend, that could inherently imply that you're ensuring that that student is actually who they say they are. Otherwise, the student isn't comprehending. So I'm okay with leaving it here, and looking at this closer with the work group. And that may be in the best interest so that we can get the broader standard in place and then maybe refine it as we move forward. Any objections to rejecting the proposed change and leaving the language as it was published? Okay. Let's see, those are all of the changes that staff is recommending. Of course, I haven't covered every single comment. I mean, that would take me all day. But I'll go ahead and open it up. If anyone on the board or staff saw a comment or any other issue that they think needs to be addressed for this particular rule proposal, speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, hearing none at this point. We've reached the end of my presentation, so now we would be entertaining a motion to recommend that the commission adopt these proposed rules as we've just discussed. And you don't have to repeat the motion, you can just say I so move if you agree with that statement. And let me just be clear. So the motion would be to recommend that the Commission of Licensing and Regulation adopt these proposed rules with the changes as we've discussed to sections 98.10.23.70.104 and .108. And we're rejecting this change to .112.
Robert Richmond, I make the motion.
Michael Manser, I second it.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we have a motion and a second on the table.
Okay. At this point then, Mary, do we need to go to all in favor, say aye?
We need a vote. Anna can handle that. To
Please.
get the yays and nays.
Chris Litfin,
Yay.
Rick Wyatt,
Aye.
Robert Richmond,
Aye.
Michael Manser,
Aye.
Kyle McNew,
Aye.
Jude Checksnyder,
Aye.
Jeffrey Alford,
Aye.
and presiding officer Keith Rovell.
Aye.
The motion passes, sir.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you, board
Thank
members.
the boards. The board, this is how it's done. I know, whoever's watching at home, they may be watching their hair grow. I don't know, but we have to discuss these things. And we came back, we came back around after a really thorough discussion. So bravo, that's why we have you here, and thank you. This is the time it takes. And that was a great discussion. Thank you all.
Thank you, folks. If there is no further discussion on any of this, we'll move on to our next agenda item. And that is recommending agenda items for the next board meeting. Does anybody have any recommendations that they would like to pose?
Chairman Ravel, before we do that, I believe if David has sound, do we have audio, David? He has more information, always working in the background for you regarding a question earlier. Do we have sound, David?
Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
So y'all had asked for the amount of monies in the motorcycle education fund account. It is currently $18.3 million.
Wow.
And that's the update that I had for you.
Thank you. All right, then, if there's no questions, comments on that, we'll move ahead to the new agenda items for the next board meeting. Any proposals, any recommendations? Seeing no
Mary
hands up.
Winston, TDLR, yes. If we don't have any at this moment, that's okay, because we can receive those, just send them to advisory.boards@tdlr.texas.gov. It's a box that 4 of us at least have access to and review. And if you come up with something after this, I'm sure everyone's still pondering, working on this rules package. But if they have more questions or something they want to present at the next meeting, please send it to that. And Derek?
Before we close, I just wanted to follow up a little bit on the process for these rules going forward. So we are planning on presenting these proposed rules that we just discussed to the commission at its August 10th meeting. And assuming the commission adopts them, we're planning on having them effective by September 1st. I just want to make everyone aware of those dates. And there will be an opportunity for anyone to provide public comment at that commission meeting as well.
Jude.
Jude Scheck-Snyder, Rider Rep. Not to place too much of a burden on TDLR because I know you have a lot on your plate, but one of the agenda items I would like to see and see it continued, since the appropriations, or at least some appropriations, are coming from General Revenue 501. I think part of the reporting to the advisory board quarterly should be expenditures from that particular fund. That's of great interest to the riders across Texas, since it's actually their money that went in there. It doesn't need to be anything drilled down too deeply, but a high level expenditure report of what's being spent from 501, I think would be instructive.
Judy got a few thumbs up for that one from our Deputy Executive Director as well, so I think we're good.
And I would like to, Keith Ravel Advisory Board, I'd like to ask also, can we continue at each one of our meetings on the updates from TEACS regarding the instructor training program? I think it's very helpful and useful to all of us. Kyle, if that would be all right with you, we would appreciate it.
Y'all can put that on the agenda.
Thank you. Any other recommendations? All right, time to talk about the next board meeting. Now, Mary, I'm correct in that all board meetings through the end of the year will continue to be virtual. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So
As of
what we're
today.
as of today, and will you all be polling the board members for the date and time of the next of the next meeting?
Yes, Delia is on vacation, well deserved this week, and Anna so graciously stepped in to fulfill her duties. But one of them, or Angelica Lopez Sparks, will be reaching out to poll the board with 3 possible dates to achieve a quorum.
Excellent. All right, if there is no further discussion, we are ready for adjournment. It is 12:50, July 19th, 2021, and unless anyone objects, the meeting of the TDLR Advisory Board for the Motorcycle Safety Advisory Board is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.